Inside Story Uganda, real source of political updates.
Honorable Ssemujju Ibrahim Nganda, our frontliner and Secretary General for the PFF. Good to have all of you and a very good evening. Well, I'll start with you, Honorable Ssemujju. You are very instrumental in the formation of the budget. You actually issued a minority report to this. What is your take on what has been presented today by Honorable Musasizi?
The 84.3 trillion budget will be financed by correction of taxes, I think about 39 trillion. We will also have money from other sources, local government, petroleum revenue, that will raise 44 trillion. And then government intends to borrow, I think, about 36 trillion. The moment you hear that the budget is gone up, the first thing you need to ask yourself, how is it going to affect you? The Honorable Omara and Kateshuma, we were members of the budget committee. There has been a change with the pay. Government is going to correct more money. Government is coming for your salary. So people are hearing budget speeches, they think they're talking about agriculture. Starting July 1st, they are coming to pick part of your salary. Because there was a revision on threshold, and people who earn, I think, was it more than 10 million?
Yes.
They're going to take 40% of your salary. So if you are earning 10, 4, they are coming for it.
I think you're being an alarmist.
That's what it means.
Okay.
So if you earn 10 million and the July 1st clocks know that government has come for 4 million from you, you're going to remain with 6. If you are using petrol, you buy petrol for your car, the prices are going to increase by at least 200 shilling. Today, a liter is at 6,550. July 1st is going to go up at least by 200,000. And there are many other taxes. So people listening to budget speech, you need to find out, because government now tells you are going to raise 39 trillion shilling. They are not going to sell cows. They are coming for your money, mobile money, those who are using data. So if you have clothes on your body, if you use airtime, they are coming for your money. That's what it means, July 1st. So that's how we are going to raise the 39 trillion, if we will ever, I know we may not, to finance the budget, and you're going to borrow 36 trillion.
Is this a budget where you tell people to tighten their belts?
They should, because they are, see, we are going to borrow, but they're also coming for your money. And then, so that's one side of the budget. The second side is that this money, the big figure that you are hearing, you've already noted 33 trillion is going for debt servicing.
33.4.
Yes. You have 9.7 going for salaries and wages, but there are also other things that go with those. So the money that is going to go with salaries, wages, and it's going to be about 14 trillion. I was doing calculation last night. And then the money that we will service government employees, the Auditor General put the figure at, I think, 360,000, is about 8 trillion. Money for fuel, money for vehicle, for seminar, money for inland travel, travel abroad, money for donation, special meals and drinks. That comes to about 8 trillion. So you have a budget, 33 trillion will go towards debt servicing, 22 trillion you're going to spend on government employees, just numbering about 400,000. And that's, I kept quarreling with both Omar and Kateshum, because NRM has made everybody to believe that actually they are going to spend 1 trillion and get people out of poverty. Because you have 1 trillion for PDM, that PDM, it targets 39%, 35% of the households in Uganda, about 14 million people. So 70% of the budget, you have classified expenditure at 2.6 trillion, 70% of the budget is already taken. Taken by debt servicing, taken by government employees, taken by classified expenditure. What remains is just about 25 trillion. That's what Mr. Museveni has.
Can it spur the economy? 25
trillion, which economy? Next financial year, we are going to borrow 36 trillion. 11 trillion is external financing, they call it. It is very good language. You're going to borrow about 11 trillion to finance projects. I was looking at the works. The budget of roads, because works has about 8 trillion, including railway and so on and so forth, but roads, works, is about 4 trillion. The parliamentary committee supervising that sector, in their report, they told us this financial year, which ends this month, during the first 6 months of the financial year, that money borrowed external to finance project, 1.4 trillion was released to do roads. But the sector consumed only 193 billion. Please mark my words. 1.4 trillion released to do roads, externally borrowed, but the absorption capacity of the sector was 193 billion, just 13% of the money released. Reason? No counter funding. And the committee observed that this 4 trillion now allocated to roads, if the absorption capacity remains at 13%, it means that at the close of this new financial year beginning July 1st, we will use just about 600 billion. So the roads are broken. I was looking at Kampala, where all of us live. Kampala has 2,000 kilometers of roads. Only 700 is done. Your capital city. You're supposed to have rights to write the city, 42,000 rights in Kampala. You have just 7,000. This is the capital city where everything starts. So in a nutshell, to answer the question you have asked me, we have a huge budget of 84 trillion. Near half is going for debt servicing. What remains is for government employees numbering 500,000, less than 500,000. The rest of you are crowded in 25 trillion. And the ones who have taken the biggest chunk of the money today have corrected at Kororo. These Omaras seated, clapping. The money for PDM, yay, PDM. All of you, 45 million people are crowded in 25 trillion.
Thank you. Honorable Omara. Honorable Ssemujju seems to paint a very ugly picture of the budget. For you, what is the good, bad, and ugly in this budget? And how does it align with Chisanja, no more sleep?
Coming after Honorable Ssemujju is always a very difficult task. But let me explain to the citizens outside there that the budget presented this evening by the Minister of Finance is actually a very good budget, which will answer in the main a number of issues that affect the citizens of Uganda. Let me start from the revenue side for the citizens to appreciate the progress that we have made so far. In 2021, when we joined Parliament together with Honorable Ssemujju, the domestic tax revenue was around 19, 20 trillion shillings. 5 years later, where are we? We are on 37, 39 trillion. When we came in 2021, where was our GDP of the country? It was $33 billion. 5 years later, where is it today? Is $69 billion. We have doubled the GDP of the country. And so, if you look at the budget which was presented today, the domestic revenue is projected to be at 44 trillion shillings, which is 52% of the total budget. So we are making progress. And I would want to admit that because of the need to front-load development expenditure items like electricity, we built so many dams in the first so many years, extending electricity, building tarmac roads, investing in the oil infrastructure at Kabale, building the airports. So there are a lot of capital investment expenditures which we had to make. And most of that, because we didn't have enough domestic revenue, we had to borrow. And that is why, as of to date, you find that our national debt is about 117 trillion shillings, which is 52.7% of our GDP. So, yes, we have accumulated debt, but if you look around us, the money we have invested has managed to spur the growth of the economy to the extent whereby now we are at, in 1986, our national GDP was at around $3.5 billion. Today we are saying we are on 69. So the ambition, if you look at the 10-fold growth strategy of government, that in the next 15 years, we should be able to build a $500 billion economy. So we have doubled the GDP in the last 5 years. We are now on 69. And the ambition in this budget is basically to help us continue on that journey of reconstruction.
Yeah, but I want you to look at this budget in bits.
Yes, so
debt financing takes 40%.
That is why I said we accumulated debts because we needed to build infrastructure, roads, electricity, in oil, investment in Kabale, in building ECOP, and so many others that we can enumerate. So we accumulated debt. That is why in the budget, about that 33 trillion shillings will go towards debt repayments and interest. And if you look at the financing strategy alone, the domestic debt refinancing is 13 trillion, which means there's the money that we have borrowed is already in our books. But since we have no money to pay for it, we have to push it forward. That is debt refinancing alone.
Okay, you are an economist.
Yes.
Does this budget pass the mark of a progressive budget?
As I've already mentioned, is that the domestic taxes have moved. That's why I said in 2021, when we came, our domestic revenue was at 20 trillion. Now, we are projecting the domestic revenue to be at 44 trillion. But the only challenge, my brother, is that the need of the country continues to grow. If, for example, the budget was stagnant, our revenue collection was going to grow where we would be in a position to fund our own budget. But because the demand of the citizens continued, like, for example, the debt ceiling kept on moving. Now we are on 84.3 trillion. Next financial year, because now we are beginning to see the oil revenues coming, in this next budget is going to be 1.4 trillion. And in the consequent year, it will be around $2 billion, which will be coming. So it would need a strategy to deal with debt. Can we now tell the citizens to say, for the time being, let us not do your roads, but let us pay for the debt? Then we can do like, which country has done it in South Africa? Is it It's not Swaziland. It's a different country. I'll remember later. They have cleared off their debt. Namibia. They have cleared their national debt. There's nothing. So you have now to purposefully plan and say, do we continue to invest in the citizens' agenda? Meanwhile, we incrementally pay for this debt, or do we focus on debt, clean it, so you tighten your belt so that every money we get, whether it's we are going to pay 80% of our revenues towards debt, and we borrow less, and you don't cry and say, government, you are not helping us to fix these roads. So the demand of the citizens...
So in essence, the budget puts the country in a dilemma.
The debt sustainability is there. Domestic revenues continue to grow. The priority agenda which is being focused on is under the ATMs, which focuses on agricultural development, on tourism, mineral development, and basically on ICT and technology.
For the benefit of our viewers,
yes,
agriculture got a paltry 2.2 trillion.
Yeah.
Seriously speaking, you allot 2.2 trillion to agriculture, and then you say you want to grow the agriculture sector.
But remember that there is also other enablers. For example, over 1.8 trillion is going to be invested to help the private sector to grow. So it's not that the money that government puts to agriculture will be the one that will spur it. It is basically a comprehensive plan. So if government builds road infrastructure, for example, where 10 trillion will be invested in building infrastructure, the railways, the roads, the water systems, that would enable that local person who is growing the vegetables, who is growing their maize, to transport them easily. So if, for example, you come from northern Uganda like me, from Lira, from Pakwach, if the meter gauge railway is completed through Gulu up to Pakwach, so if I have 1,000 bags of maize and I want to bring it to Kampala, I don't have to hire trucks to be on the road, which is very expensive. I'll put them on the meter gauge and bring it to Kampala cheaply. So
sometimes you excite me. The president was in Usoga.
Yes.
He said these pharaohs are using the Tamaka road to dry cassava.
But how do you expect the president to come and now create wealth in your own homes?
So what do you start?
That is why the work of government is development, and government has put wealth creation initiatives, like the one it doesn't want to hear about, the PDM and the Myoga. Let me tell you, in the last term, this term which has ended, government injected over 4 trillion shillings in PDM. That is money that went directly to the 36%
and who
are not yet in the bunny economy. We have not yet started recovering, but that money, 400 million shillings, is already within a circle in a parish. Down in my parish, they already have 400 million in their circle, which has never happened. That is direct money.
Has it been a turnaround?
In this particular budget, my brother, is that government has put in place 2.5 trillion shillings for PDM and for the Myoga. And in the past, they used to receive only 100 million shillings in a parish. This time, they are going to have 200 million. If you tell me that is something which has never happened to a common person in the village. So we believe that will spur the economy. It will help to create the aggregate demand at the village level. And if, as the president said, this is now Kisanja, no sleep. And what the president said this evening was that all of us, we cannot sit and expect the government to come and create wealth. Or the president to now come and say, give us the money. All of us, we must now get that.
I want to get to Honorable Sevina, but on that very point where you said the president was emphatic on awakening everyone.
Yes.
Isn't the president preaching water and drinking wine when he speaks of austerity that we need now to see local chiefs riding bicycles?
Yes.
Yet the State House budget is getting more inflated.
1 trillion.
1 trillion.
You see, presidency everywhere in the world is an area which is safely guarded, is empowered for the president to do his job. And when you begin to look at the political economy of Uganda, there are certain things that the president does which is not in my domain or in yours.
Can you talk austerity
Yes.
when you're lavish?
I wouldn't comment.
Well, Honorable Seminar, this definitely was your maiden budget.
Yeah, sure.
Have you had time to analyze and scrutinize this budget? And what does it mean for Omuntu wa wansi?
Yes, thank you very much, my brother Simon. When I was looking at this budget, the first area I had to go to was the revenue. The sources they expect, where the revenue is going to come from. My brothers have already talked about these revenue sources, but I will concentrate on the borrowing, especially the internal borrowing. I think the world has already talked about this borrowing as becoming a scourge to this country. But it even gets worse that we have to borrow from within all that much. And that would mean that the government is going to compete with this local trader, this local manufacturer, with this, who is going to run to these banks to borrow some money. And now, if the government is going to compete with these local investors and business persons for these funds from our local banks, then it will be a disservice to the business community. You know very well that every money lender, every bank cannot compare a local trader with the government, even in terms of recovery of funds. But if we are going to borrow over 11 trillion from our internal sources, and even the refinancing, the domestic refinancing is also over that tune, over 13 trillion, then it means that the local trader should start mourning. And the other worst bit is that most of the banks where government is going to borrow from are foreign banks, meaning that the interest that is going to accumulate on these domestic loans is also going to be repatriated. And by so doing, we are draining the economy in a way, because most of these banks are foreign banks. So I was looking at this revenue and then the taxes, because as it appears, government is trying to find other alternatives other than the development partners as a source, a formidable source of revenue for our budget. That's why you see they're trying to squeeze from all the sources, from within, tax and non-tax revenue sources. Because as they move, as they become more and more of a dictatorial, let me use that harsh word, a dictatorial regime, as it degenerates into more and more of that, sitting on human rights, all the atrocities they are meting against their fellow citizens, the development partners are beginning to walk away, and they are saying now, we also don't want your finances. We can find this money from our internal sources. So they will squeeze the nationals more, and that's why you see that the taxes are also through the nose. So the revenue, first of all, with a bloated budget is a problem.
So to what extent does this budget pass for a pro-poor budget?
To no extent, because you are not going to tell me that already when last year's budget was stood at 72 trillion, and the country was crying. I know that by this time, my brother, Honorable Ssemujju, they went on passing additional requests in terms of supplementary budgeting. And as we talk now, it has hit over 80 trillion, while the approved budget was 72. By end of year, we are already at 80 or over 80. So it means that the Ugandans should continue to brace for harder times.
Well, thank you.
Simon, can I provide some information? Quick one. May I tell my colleague here that because Uganda's economy has been well managed and is very, very resilient, and you need to listen to this very carefully, that in this budget, which was read today, 85.2% of that budget will be funded from resources within this country. Just a minute, you have to listen.
Okay, help us.
From resources within this country. So it will be out of domestic revenue, it will be out of internal borrowing. Do you know why we are now able to borrow domestically? Simon, because the culture of savings, because the economy is buoyant, we have been able to save about 48 trillion shillings.
How about the other notion that...
yes, the only thing is that...
the other lenders have since abandoned us.
No, even if the other lenders were to go, because now in this budget, the amount of money, their contribution to this budget will only be 14.8. 85.2, we shall handle it from here. Whether it means we are borrowing from banks or from other sources within here, it is our savings. And we must be proud about it.
It was to me, just a minute. I want Honorable Mara not to embarrass us here.
There's no embarrassment. It's a fact.
It is a very, very difficult situation for a local trader, a local businessman, that he has to go and line up with the government to source for funds from our local banks. So it's not a good thing.
Well, Honorable Katesh, already we've heard from Honorable Ssemujju depicting gloom about this budget.
That's the budget we processed.
But how rosy is it, and how tenable is it, where you have to spend 40% on debt refinancing?
Well, first of all, the Honorable Ssemujju, when he came to Parliament in 2011, that year, the former Minister of Finance, the Honorable Maria Chwanka, read the budget, and the total resource envelope in that financial year was 9.84 trillion. Total resource envelope. At that time, the revenue correction was about 5 trillion. So, you are talking about not long ago, we have had members of parliament who have been in that parliament. I don't know whether that year, whether Honorable Ssemujju was on budget, but the entire resource envelope was 9 trillion. We are talking about 84. That is how far we have gone. In that year, the export receipts were around 2.4 billion exports. you are talking about $18 billion exports. And of course, GDP has almost tripled since then. So I don't think it is accurate to say that, you know, the economy has not grown. It's just that as we grow, the demands have also increased. But in terms of the budget, there is no country, most of the countries in the world have debt. In fact, our debt levels are manageable within the circumstances.
Hmm?
You have to understand that, you know.
Sorry, I need to hear this again. Uganda's debt levels are manageable.
Are manageable. Because,
and you're spending 40%.
Because, you see, you are trying to condemn the decision of government to borrow over the years without understanding where was the borrowing going. Because if you need a road to be done and you need an airport to be built, these are enablers. Because you are talking about the money going into agriculture, but I remember many years ago when I was growing up, how many hours did it take me from here to Mbarara? How many trucks of matoke or milk would you find on the road broken down because of poor infrastructure? So over the years, debt has accumulated, not because we are borrowing for consumption or we are borrowing for salaries, but because we must do infrastructure to be able to enable the growth of the economy. And so the question now should be, you also have to look at the revenue base. You have a percentage of our people who are outside the money economy. So if you are looking at the tax to GDP ratio, you have a big portion of people within the GDP bracket that are perhaps contributing nothing in terms of the tax. Therefore, the efforts by government, as you have seen, in the investments in the wealth fund, trying to wake up people to get into the money economy, ultimately will drive the aggregate demand, push production, and of course, as a result, then you expand the revenue base because you have now a bigger percentage of the population being able to consume and paying consumption taxes. And over the years, that's how you grow the revenue base and you are able to slowly by slowly reduce debt or borrowing. But your tax register has got less than 6 million people that are carrying the burden. So you must get as more people into the money economy so that they have money to spend, and when they spend, then you can collect the revenue and be able to finance your needs. Otherwise, even someone who does not pay tax or contribute tax, when he falls sick, he needs to go to the hospital and find medicine.
Honorable Katesh, I want to take you back to the theme of the budget. They say full monetization of Uganda's economy through commercial agriculture, industrialization, expanding and broadening services, digital transformation, and market access. Where are the priorities that align with the theme?
Of course, if you look at the ATMs, and we've talked about agro-industrialization, about 2.something billion that has been put. But in addition, for you to be able to promote agriculture, you must be able to promote the factors that enable the production of agriculture. You need to have roads, you need to have electricity to enable agro-processing, you must secure your markets.
Do you imagine how much has been put in agriculture?
Because you are looking
at 2.2 trillion.
So, if you produce the goods and you are not able to transport them, look at the amount of money that they have put in to revive the standard gauge rail. What is it going to help? It means that if you are able to export your coffee, the enablers of you to export the coffee have been catered for.
Do you know how many times the standard gauge railway has appeared in the budget? Honorable Ssemujju, you could help me here.
No, I can explain, because you see, you wanted Uganda to build a standard gauge from Marava to Kampala without having a connection on the other side because it's a regional project. So until Kenya committed to extending the SGR to the border, there is no way Uganda was going to start building a standard gauge railway that connects from nowhere.
So what happened to the first allocation?
Which allocation?
There
was never an allocation on SGR because it was not.
You could help me here, Honorable.
There has been money allocated to.
It was for meter gauge, and
There has
that
been
meter
money
gauge is now
allocated
around
for-
66%.
For the standard gauge railway for compensation, I think more than, because the total compensation will cost Uganda about 800 billion. At the moment, I think government claims that they have compensated the project affected persons from all the way from Maraba up to around Wikwe. So we have spent so far more than 300 billion on compensation. So we have always had money for standard gauge railway in the budget, not as much. But I want to invite my friends who are still in Parliament to read the reports of their own committees, reports of committees chaired by NRM. We are going to spend 2.9 euro, about 10 trillion on the standard gauge railway. If you read the report of the committee on infrastructure, the Islamic Development Bank is going to contribute about 410 million euro. Uganda is contributing, I think, 72 million. We don't know where the rest of the money will come from. The date of disclosure is supposed to be November this year. If you read the reports of government, their own reports are saying there is no plan on how this date, because 10 trillion shillings is a lot of money. We are not even sure that it will start. The standard gauge railway, we're not sure. Because initially it was supposed to have been funded by Chinese. We had even contracted a Chinese company. Now we've moved to Turkey. So the theory of what they present in a meeting and the practical part of it are completely different.
Honorable Katesh, you may continue.
For me, I think that there has been commitment on the side of the region. And you know, this skepticism, I remember when the East African crude oil pipeline was being discussed, the same, many Ugandans doubted that this project could actually take off. What we have seen in the recent times is that both countries, you know, Kenya has committed. If you look at their budget, they have committed to extending the SGR to the border. And I think that government will be able to fulfill the commitment. Because you see, we are a landlocked country. And one of the disadvantages that we have is that we are susceptible to high cost of doing business. Because unlike other countries, if you are going to export your goods from here outside, but you are not going to compete with someone who is producing from closer to Mombasa, who is not incurring the cost that you are having. So,
yes, sir.
Why do we need both the meter and the standard gauge railway? Because you're spending almost $1 trillion repairing the meter, and we are borrowing to construct standard gauge railway.
because you see the interconnectedness of the region. First of all, the standard gauge railway is moving from Mombasa all the way to here, and I think eventually to Kigali and other places. But you have had the meter gauge, for example, that goes to Gulu and connects to South Sudan. In the short or medium term, you may not have the funds to be able to extend SGR all the way. So the decision by government to actually repair the old meter gauge at, within the affordable means is to provide relief on that essential factor of production, which is
I
infrastructure.
was with you when
Yes.
we went to inspect the cargo, the containers coming by standard gauge railway were being transferred to
By
to
the meter gauge. Do you see the
If you are a poor country, because at the moment it is serving us, so I want the economics. Why do we need both?
No,
Because
actually-
we are with you when we are inspecting.
No, Honorable Ssemujju.
Yes.
The railway line, the old meter gauge from that brings containers to the borders, would actually lift about 100, and would not have capacity to take on, one single lot. So, for me, I think you have to look at the. First of all, you had the existing infrastructure. It just needed to be repaired, and then you can be able to provide short and immediate term relief. As you look at the regional connectivity with SGR, which also feeds into tourism, because nowadays one of the sectors in Kenya that is booming is tourism. If you go to Mombasa during peak season,